there, it's Tiff, and this is my weekly What Have I Read that I've started doing recently. So, I've actually read some things this week. I'm kind of excited because I had a really good reading week despite it being fairly busy. So, what did I finish? Monday and Tuesday, I did a lot of listening to the Mad Ship, and I finished that. I'm obsessed. I think this is the best book in the trilogy. It's the only one I've reread, and I don't know if I really want to reread Ship of Destiny. But I don't know if that's because of the emotional pain that comes with a lot of the things that happen in that one. So we'll see how I feel about it, but I'm very happy that I reread The Mad Ship. I feel really ready to talk about it, or to listen to everybody talk about it during the live show that Literary Diversions will be doing. I don't think there's a date for that yet, but I'm very excited about it. That's the whole reason I reread it. It's very solid. It holds up. The world building, honestly, Rob and Hobb is so good at setting a setting and building a grand political scheme around it. And I just love the dragon lore in these books. I find it so unique and so fascinating. And I'm obsessed with all these characters. Like, Althea is honestly, she grows so much in this book, and I just love her. I just love Althea and Amber. So there's some other things that I read as well. I had to write them down so that I could remember. I then devoured all of Patricia Wants to Cuddle on Wednesday. This is a horror comedy, kind of. It is set here in the Pacific Northwest, which is kind of why I was like, oh, this is gonna be fun. And it centers, you can tell by the cover, it centers around a Sasquatch. If you know Pacific Northwest and you see that big giant hand, you're like, yeah, it's a Sasquatch. And I love Sasquatch horror, and like comedy horror and stuff. Max Brooks's Devolution was really enjoyable for me. I really liked that, despite the conveniences of some of the plot stuff in there. This I listened to on audio. Listened to it, it's about a 6-hour book, so a day was really all it took. It's kind of funny not in like a laugh out loud way, but in like a witty and its remarks on society kind of way. Okay, I had to take a brief intermission. So Patricia Wants to Cuddle. It's not, like I said, it's not laugh out loud funny. It's kind of more like social commentary. We're following 4 women, I believe, who are in the end, like the finale of this dating competition to date this millionaire. And he's kind of skeezy. And we're following each of them as they head up to this like isolated island in the Pacific Northwest. And weird stuff starts happening. And it just kind of goes off the rails. I enjoyed it more than I should have. And I think the audio narration definitely had something to say for that. I think if I read it physically, like with my eyeballs, I might have not enjoyed it as much, but it was just so silly. It was just absolutely ridiculous, and that made me enjoy it. We talked a lot about how women treat each other and how a lot of it is societally expected, I think, because these women were constantly taking jabs at each other and just being mean to each other, but then like we're also like friendly with each other, and it was just the producers kind of like pushing them to be that way because that's what the audience wants to see. So it was very interesting from that aspect for me to like watch something like that, like listen to something like that. And so I kind of like that aspect of it. The main character also was trying to determine her like sexuality, and she's older, she's 30, and she hasn't come to terms with what her sexuality is yet. And I do kind of like to see a lot of, like, I like it when it's not just like a 15 or 16-year-old, because, well, that's valid and needed. There's also something to say about older women above the age of like 25 who are like trying to figure out their sexuality and understand themselves and all of that type of stuff. And that's something that I find really fascinating to watch, and I think is very needed in books and things and media, is to have coming of age stories that are later in life, because there's so much that you discover about yourself later in life once you are away from the immediate influences of your family or your friends that you grew up with or your social circles or your hometown. That coming of age, you can come of age at different ages, especially given how much people change as they age and learn and grow and develop. And yeah, I am an entirely different person than I was in my late 20s, because going to a different country for my PhD and my master's was completely formative for my personality. And yeah, so anyway, I like things like that. So I enjoyed it. It wasn't good by any means. I think I gave it like a 3.75 because it was enjoyable. I wanted more out of it. I think it's definitely horror light. So there's a little bit of body gore, like body horror and some gore, and some violence, but not until like the end. It's mostly just like the horrors of being a woman in society, essentially, and being a woman who's dating. And yeah, I think it's not like a horror all the way through. It's very literary in a lot of the things that it does. So if you're not necessarily one for big spooky books, I think that one was pretty good for that aspect of it. And I always love things set in the Pacific Northwest. So then the last thing I read was Don't Let the Forest In. I'm going to do a longer review of this for this weekend, because this surprised me. I was on the fence about it. I was excited about it when it first got promoted. I requested a NetGalley arc. So this comes out tomorrow. So to the day that you're seeing this has come out. It's a YA, which I was like, I've read not so many, but I've read more YAs this year than I have before. And I kind of had hit the point where I was like, I'm pretty sure I'm just past the age where this writing style and these stories are working for me. I think they are valuable, and I am kind of jealous of the people that enjoy them because I think some of them are really fun, but they haven't been hitting for me. This one, however, it hit, and I think some of it was just the way that it was written, the setting, the story. We're doing dark academia, and so far I've been 2 for 2 on dark academia in the last couple months. So I'm very excited about that. So this is a kind of gothic, I think the author calls it, which they're Paper Fury on Instagram. I just saw a post from them today that said they called it forest rot dark academia, and that's pretty much what it is. It comes off as kind of gothic because of the setting. We're set in a boarding prep school, and we have 2 kids who are in their senior year, Andrew and Thomas. And Andrew is he's very anxious. He's got a lot of social anxiety. He's very much in his head all the time. He's called shy, but he's not shy. He's generally just afraid to talk to people. He has a lot of depression, a lot of self-loathing. He doesn't see the worth in himself, so he doesn't want people talking to him. And he's constantly apologizing for being around people. I'm sorry, I don't mean to be here. I'll leave in a minute. You don't have to put up with me type of personality. And it's hard to tell kind of in the beginning where he's got that, because he seems to have a fairly loving relationship with his father. He seems to be very supportive, if not currently absent, given the boarding school. And there's a little bit of his past with his father and his sister, who he's very close with, his twin, Dove, who he talks about a lot. And we see her in a little bit in the beginning, but their relationship is kind of fractured in the beginning of the book. And you're left kind of wondering why, and Andrew's kind of floundering to be on his own. And so in the beginning I was kind of like, oh, it very much shows Dove had taken on the older sibling role, and he was very much had a lot of learned helplessness where she just kind of did everything for him type of relationship between the 2 of them. And so they're twins, and so I don't know what the dynamic with twins is, but as an older sibling, that happened a lot. I definitely, when my brother was younger, ended up having to be like, nope, I can't help you anymore because I am doing too many things for you, and that is not good for your development because we're 5 years apart. And so when he was really young, I would do things for him because I was also really young, but I could do things. So I understand that dynamic a lot. And so I was like, okay, so we're kind of doing that. His sister has separated from him a bit. It's like, that's what happens when you're in your late teens. Makes sense. But Andrew's comfort person is his roommate, Thomas, who is very boisterous, where Thomas is reserved and quiet, or where Andrew's reserved and quiet, Thomas is a big, huge, aggressive personality. And Thomas has kind of started the year a little bit off compared to where Andrew remembers him from before. They hadn't been able to talk over the summer, and so he's kind of excited to see his friend again, but he's there's something off with him. And so he follows him into the woods one night and discovers that there's way more wrong than he thought there was. And the two boys end up spiraling into this like obsession, monster hunting, dark forest stuff is coming into the schools. Parts of the school are starting to like be infected. That's where you kind of get the gothic thing, but we're also dealing with bullying and academic stress, and these two boys have so much weight on their shoulders, and then they're just spiraling more and more into each other and latching onto each other and getting more and more obsessed. And so it's very interesting in that dynamic. And then, yeah, where was I going? So everything just kind of gets out of control. It's sprinkled in between with excerpts from Andrew's writing. He writes stories, he writes dark fairy tales, and Thomas illustrates them. I just saw a flip through today from Paper Fury. They were flipping through the physical book, and it has actual like illustrations in it. And I'm like, I'm gonna need a physical of this, aren't I? It's gonna be another one where I wasn't expecting to need a physical, but the illustrations are gorgeous, and they're in the regular edition. So that's kind of exciting. So I ate this up. I didn't have a lot of time to physically read during the week, but every time I sat down, I would just read a chunk. I managed to get through it in like 5 hours. It's 350 pages, and that is fast for me. I sat down last night, and in 2.5 hours, I think it was actually 2 hours. My Kindle said 2.5 hours, and I finished it in 2 hours, read 160 pages, which is really good for me because it's just consumable. The prose is lovely. The story itself is pretty good. I did have some issues. I felt the ending was a little bit rushed, but again, I'm not going to do a full review. So I have done a very mini review here. So the end was a little bit rushed. And I do wish there had been a little bit more, but I think the twist and the reveals were spot on. And I definitely think C.G. Drews is an author that I will be looking out for something else. Hopefully they do an adult book, because I would love to see something more adult with a little more in-depth, because I think their prose is great for that. And their writing of horror is really good. Definitely check out the trigger warnings for this, because there are some dark kind of concepts in here that could be concerning for some people, depending on what you like to read. So that's what I read this week. I have started The Blade Itself, or the sequel to The Blade Itself, which is Before They Are Hanged. I'm listening to that on audio. I'm about 30% in and absolutely loving it. The audio narrator for this is so good. I'm so glad I picked the audio version, and I kind of wanted to pick up the physicals, but for me, if I start something in one format, I need to finish it in that format. The one exception is the next thing I'm going to be talking about. So Before They're Hanged it follows immediately ending the end of The Blade Itself. It's a multi-POV, grim, dark fantasy. No one in this series is good. Nobody is exceptionally likable. I do like some of the characters. I think I like the story of Logan Ninefingers. He is a Northman who is trying to not be known by his nickname of the Bloody Nine. And so he's trying to be better, and I do love him a lot. And then there's Inquisitor Glocta, who is a torturer, and I should not like him as much as I do, but his internal monologue is just so good compared to who he is externally, and I'm really hoping for a minor redemption arc for him. There's a point where he starts to ask when is it too late to decide to be a good man, and I was just like, oh, Glocta. So I'm very happy with this series. Like I said, the audio narration is just peak. So that's what I'm listening to this week. I will hopefully finish it before the end of the month, but I have like 30% in, and that's 7 hours. So I've got 14 hours left. I am listening to it at double or 1.5 speed, because the audio narration works at 1.5 speed. So I can maybe get through it this week, depending on how much I actually sit down and listen. I do have some chores I gotta do today, so I'll probably be listening a little bit. And then I want to finish The Fury of the Gods. I had the ARC, and I decided to stop, because I really just wanted to read this physically, and I was waiting for my pre-order to come from bookshop.org. I had such an adventure getting this, and I'm so mad, so I'm going to tell you about it. So I ordered this from Bookshop, and they ship through UPS, and so UPS said my order had shipped, and I looked at where it shipped from, and it was 20 minutes away. I was like, can't I just go pick it up? But I couldn't, so I had to wait 3 days. And on the third day, I was like, okay, it's supposed to be here today. So I'm checking the tracking, and it goes, your order is ready to be picked up. And I was like, excuse me, you were supposed to be delivering it. So I clicked on that tracking, and it led me to USPS, the US Postal Service. So I clicked on that tracking, and that tracking was like, your order is ready to be picked up at, and it gave the address for my local post office. I was like, what the hell? Come on, man. Like, UPS drives through my neighborhood every day. I see them. Why couldn't you just drop it at my door? So I go Saturday morning to pick it up from the post office. And the post office is like, she takes like 10 minutes. And I was like, oh no, something's wrong with it. Excuse my nails, I haven't fixed them. And I'm like, no, something's wrong with it. So I'm waiting. And she comes back and she's like, so your mail carrier has your package. And I was like, what? And she was like, well, I called him because I couldn't find it. So I called your mail carrier, and I was like, oh my God, you called him? Thank you. And she was like, so the UPS driver gave it directly to your mail carrier. They did not bring it here, but then they marked on their information that it had been dropped off at the post office. So then our system updated that it was here at the post office, but it's actually in your mail carrier's van. So it'll be at your house when he gets to your route today. I was like, okay. So that's when I decided, all right, we're just going to read. We're going to plow through Don't Let the Forest In, and we're going to get that done on the Kindle. And then as soon as I get The Fury of the Gods in person, we're going to finish reading it. So I am 17% in. I have to figure out what page that corresponds to. And then I'm going to start from there because I just really want to, I mean, it's a big floppy paperback. I want to read it. I want to read it like this. And I want to sit here and just absorb and consume. And that's what I want to do. So hopefully this is a lot of pages, 530-ish pages. So 17% is not very far. I'm guessing that's somewhere, I'm going to do math. Hold on. So 10% would be 50 pages, 53 pages. And then we add half of that would be 70. We're somewhere around page 80-ish, somewhere around page 80, 85. So that would be, we'll say that I'm right here. So I want to get this done by Thursday night. Let's see if I can. Though, to be fair, this, where is it? This is the extras and acknowledgements. So it's this much. I can do it. I've done it before. That's going to be me reading about 470 pages in the next 4 days. So confidence. Anyway, that's what I've been doing. I have been rewatching the 2013 Sleepy Hollow series. So I'm about to go upstairs, do some more work, and watch a bit of that today, and see if I can get through season 1 before the end of the month, because I'm very slow at watching things. I'm also doing my annual Over the Garden Wall rewatch, and obsessed and loving it. And then I'm working on a couple sewing projects down here. So that's kind of what's in front of me. I've got some scraps left over from it, and so I'm kind of excited from the project. I've got enough, I think, to make a vest that I'm going to make for my sister, so she can have a vest that matches her dog's jacket that I'm making him. So I've got to do the binding on the jacket today, and then or this week, and then I'll be done with it. So that's what I'm doing. This is the jacket if you're interested. The dog coat. So he's a big dog. So this is the part I'm struggling with, is the binding for this, because this is like this fold. So this is really small, and I have to get the binding over this. And I may have to put some like hem tape on it and iron it on, and then sew over it once it's ironed on, because the pins are not working. So that's where I'm at with that. If you're interested. Yeah, so that's what I'm up to this week. I'll see you Saturday with my full review of Don't Let the Forest In, which I got really lucky and is another positive review. So I'll see you soon.